welcome to my sewing room. We have such an exciting show for you today. A beautiful technique with a sort of funny name. The technique today is Passementerie, and I want to show you what it is. This wonderful pink suit has the Passementerie technique that is attached to the braid, and then there's two different kinds of braid here, making an absolutely elegant and very expensive designer look. Now, if you would like to purchase an outfit and do this beautiful Passementerie treatment on it, this is a dress that was purchased, and the Passementerie simply means attaching the braid in a really interesting way, so you don't even have to sew it all to get this elegant look. Okay, pretty blouse, white on white, another type of Passementerie. This time it has a pretty braid, white braid. Isn't that an elegant look? The Passementerie on the linen, very, very tailored and very pretty blouse. Passementerie is not just for adult clothing, it's also for baby's clothes. This little baby day gown is a baby bishop with no smocking on it, just gathered around the neck, and the Passementerie on the front of the day gown that goes down to the bottom and goes around is actually serger braid. And then the serger braid is attached. So see, you didn't have to buy any braid at all on this. You can make your own on the serger. We have another baby day gown for you with the Passementerie with a sort of also a braid that looks a little bit more like ribbon and little flowers on the bottom. Flowers and then the little vines. I think this is awfully sweet, done on the Swiss Nylona with the little Passementerie and the daisies and the vines on the bottom. And now Passementerie can also be used for a lady's evening gown. This lovely evening dress has the Passementerie at the top, and by the way, Charlotte Potter made this for her daughter's prom. So you see, we can use Passementerie in a number of different ways. It can be done on ladies' clothing, it can be done on baby clothing. Most of all, as you know, we like to tell you, it's easy and it's fun. Won't you come along to the technique boards with me, and we'll begin to share with you just how this very interesting technique is done. Passementerie is absolutely a beautiful technique, and really it's very easy to do. There are several ways of doing the Passementerie, but one I want to share with you is you can trace off the design, as we've done here on this, what is to be a pillow in a few minutes, on the gold silk dupioni. Now, what kinds of braids can you use for this beautiful technique? Well, almost anything, if you want to know the truth. The first is a gold soutache braid. Excuse me. The next is a round braid with gold and red threads. The next is a flat braid with black and gold. And next, this braid is the one you make on a serger. You don't buy it at all, you make it. This is a black ribbon floss. Now, I told you there are a couple of ways of doing the Passementerie. Now, watch here. You don't have to trace any lines on it all. You can simply start and go what I call free form or free motion. You see, there are no lines on this pillow, just the square that you're going to work within for this pillow. And now then, I'd like to come over to welcome my very special guest today, my friend and business colleague, Louise Baird. Louise, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Martha. It's always great to be here. Passementerie, like you were saying at the board, Martha, you can draw your design, or you can just do it free form. The types of braids that you can use, one, Martha did show a serger braid, and I did it on a little tricot strip and then end up cutting the tricot away, and you have a braid that's very flexible and easy to use. Okay, this is a flat braid, and that's the braid I'll actually sew with in just a minute. And then this is a purchased bias tube that you can buy, or you can actually make a bias tube for yourself. And it's very flexible, and it'll go in just about any direction. And then again, here is the red braid that Martha showed. It's a round braid. Whenever you sew these down, I generally would use an invisible thread. On the black one, which I'll sew in just a second, I would use the smoke-colored invisible thread, but on a lighter color, I would use the clear invisible thread. Okay, now to get your design, if you decide that you wanted to trace your design on the fabric, one way is you can actually get a stencil that's a bling stencil. And with this stencil, you can take a fabric marker on your fabric and just trace so that you have your design on your fabric. Now I've got it on a piece of paper here, but it would be the same thing. Or another thing that you can do is just kind of draw sort of like a puzzle shape. Now the bigger or wider your braid is, the larger your loops should be. Okay, you don't want to have the loops too small if it's a wide braid because it'll cover up the whole piece. Okay, now to begin with, let me let you hold that. I have tied on my thread. I've got and did several little straight stitches, and I've got the braid underneath an open toe applique foot. Now the open toe applique foot is a foot that has no bar across the front so you can see where you're going, but an applique foot also has a trough up underneath the foot so that it allows the braid to pass. Different machines have different type of feet that would work very well for this. Now I'm stitching on this one with just a straight stitch, but you can also use a zigzag stitch if you want. And when I stitch, I usually guide my fabric with one hand and I hold the braid in front of my needle with the other hand and just start stitching. And just guide as I go. You want to be sure to have your needle down. In this machine, it just stays down all by itself. And turn it a little bit, and then I'm going to continue to sew so that you can really sew in any direction that you want it to go. Braids generally are very pliable and easy to handle. Now I do have one other design that I just wanted to show you that some of the things that you showed in the beginning of the show had specific designs in it. And you might have a fabric like the silk dupioni that you cannot see through. So to get your design onto the silk dupioni, if you would just trace it onto Solvay or a wash-away stabilizer and then use a temporary spray adhesive to glue it in place, and then also place a stabilizer behind it. I just used a lightweight tearaway stabilizer behind it. And
I think you temporary sprayed it in place too, didn't you? We just kind of glue everything, don't we?
Right, right. Now in this sample, I have already stitched the leaves because I did want to show that you do need to be sure that the ends are going to be covered. As you come around, you want to be able to cover up those ends. In fact, let me just kind of stitch a little bit on this. I'll take this out from under the machine and put this under.
I love that. Is that the soutache braid?
Yeah, this is a soutache braid. And I'm also going to leave a little bit of a tail so that I'll be able to hold it in just a minute to cut it close to the stitching. But I just want to stitch. And then I'm going to take my scissors. This underneath piece right here, I want to cut very close so that when I do the piece on top of it, it's going to be covered up completely and it won't ravel. But you can see how I always turn with the needle down in the fabric. And then this one I am just following the lines, and for me it's a little bit easier to follow the lines if I lay my braid on the fabric in front of the needle.
Well, Louise, this is absolutely fascinating, and it doesn't look too terribly hard.
No.
You know what I wanted to share with our viewers is this beautiful pillow that I showed the beginnings of it over there, and you were telling me something fascinating. How long did it take you to make this pillow?
About 45 minutes.
Now, I call that fast and easy, and we like sewing made easy. Isn't this beautiful? The Passamenterie is something that you might want to try, and as Louise has shared with you, it is easy. Louise, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you, Martha.
And next we have a segment, Sewing for Baby. This pillow, this baby pillow, is one of my very favorites of all times. Now let me just let you see how cute it is. I love the way this pillow's made. It is simply 2 pieces of fabric sewn together, turn right side out with, and I'll show you how the back is done in a minute, and then wing needle entredot, or if you don't have wing needle entredot, you can just zigzag. I've seen some really pretty inexpensive ones in the stores done just like this. Don't you love the way the pillow is made? Now, the Passementerie treatment on this pillow is done after you make your serger braid. B-A-B-Y, baby, is spelled out in the Passementerie, and look at the little machine embroidery in the upper right-hand corner with a baby ball, a little teddy bear, and a boat. And this is an elegant pillow, but the wonderful thing is it is so easy. Let me turn it over and show you the back. Now you have your 2 rectangles, and then you have one piece that has buttonholes in it and buttons. You slip your pillow in that way, and I'll show you a little bit more about how to make it in just a minute. Now then, once again, let's go back to our Passementerie. We've used a sort of a thick rayon thread, this time in pink, because this pillow was for pink for a baby girl. And then we've used the tricot to make it. Now, if you're making a pillow for a baby boy, then you might want to use blue. And we used pink. And by the way, I have something very interesting to tell you. Did you know until 1930 that pink was for boys and blue was for girls? And that's a documented fact. Don't ask me how it got turned around, but it did. So anyway, pink has not always been for girls. Okay, now let's see how easy it is to make this really nice pillow. This would be, we've done ours in linen, but it would be great done in silk dubioni. It'd be beautiful done even in something as soft as a batiste, or even in denim. This pillow would just be great done in almost any fabric. First of all, I trace off the rectangle. This one just happens to have a 2.5-inch seam allowance all the way around the side. Then I make 2 pieces for the 2 pieces of the back. Here's the first piece, folded back 1 inch, folded back 1 inch. I will go ahead before I construct the pillow and put the buttonholes in the pillow, and then of course I'll have another piece underneath. All right, now then I'm going to sew. When I get my other piece on here, I'm going to sew all the way around the very edge to attach the 2 pieces. I'm going to turn it right side out and press it. Let me show you the back again. I've already done my temporary spray adhesive to hold these together, but this is what the back looks like. I have my buttonholes, and I'll sew my buttons on the back. After I have finished constructing the pillow, then I will, or the basic pillow, then I will come over here after I've done my temporary spray adhesive, and I'm going to do a wing needle entredot stitch. Now, as I said before, if your machine does not have a wing needle entredot stitch, then you can certainly just use a zigzag, a tight zigzag, kind of like a buttonhole stitch. But it's so pretty if your machine does have a wing needle entredot, or even a baby daisy entredot stitch. It is so pretty to use that particular stitch and going around the side and making this pretty and very easy to make pillow. And next, I have a Sew Kool for Kids segment for you. I'm so happy to have as my guest today my daughter, Joanna Pullen Hammett. Joanna, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
And what do you have today that's so cool for kids?
Well, today we're going to make a greeting card. And this happens to be a happy birthday card, but you can use it for any special occasion, a Christmas card or an Easter card or any type of occasion. And all you do is you take a piece of plain cardboard. Any type of fun confetti. Right here I've got different threads, all different color metallic threads. And then I've got heart confetti.
Oh, this is the fun part here.
Or just decorate. You can, it can be so unique because you can just do it any way you'd like. I sprinkle it on. And then I take a piece of clear vinyl.
Is that like you purchased at the craft store?
Like you purchased, just plain vinyl as you purchased at the craft store. And you need to make sure that all your threads are underneath the vinyl, or you know what, if you can clip them off too, either way. And all you're going to do is simply do a straight stitch all the way around.
What a fun, easy
And
project.
you know, before I did this project, I thought it might be kind of tricky to sew on this plastic, but it's really not.
Not tricky
not
at
all.
Plastic. I thought that was kind of cute, and you said, now wait a minute, we better check on this one.
So I don't know about this plastic zone, but it's really not at all.
No problem at all. I can't imagine how much fun little girls or little boys should listen. This is not
That's
just
right.
a little girl.
Uh-huh.
Sewing is not just for little
That's
girls.
right. So anyway, you just simply straight stitch all the way around, clip your threads that are out of the plastic, and I'll show you on this one how we have a silver straight stitch around the first straight stitch, the silver part, just to give it a little color.
Well, and that adds
So,
a little bit more pizzazz.
it does,
You know,
it
Joanna,
does.
I think kids love happy colors and happy sewing and happy things. Just makes it so much more fun to have a little bit of silver thread, I think. And next, I have a home decorating project for you. To me, there's nothing any prettier for home decorating than a small quilt. This quilt, which is done in pink and green, would be wonderful in any room in your house that has a pink and green theme. Of course, you can make it in any color scheme. Now, what I'd like to share with you today is a technique called Normandy lace shaping. And this particular square with this wonderful heart in the middle has Normandy lace shaping. Now, what is Normandy lace shaping? Well, it's lace shaping done on cotton netting. Now, this lace shaping is very unusual because I have used edging to shape the heart, not insertion. Now, the diamond in the middle has been shaped with lace insertion. The embroidery has been done by machine, although you certainly could put hand embroidery if you prefer. But I'd like for you to come over here with me to the sewing machine now and let me share with you just how easy it is to do Normandy lace shaping. Now, you do need cotton netting if it is available. Of course, you could use another type of netting, but the reason I don't like to use synthetic nettings is, first of all, they turn orange after 25 years. Nylon and polyester just don't hold up the way cotton does. And secondly, if you put too hot an iron on it, it just melts. So it isn't really a good idea to use your synthetic netting. This is cotton netting, and I have used a water-soluble stabilizer underneath it, and I'm going to use a temporary spray adhesive to kind of glue them together. Now, there's one layer, but you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to really put 2 or 3 more layers of this water-soluble stabilizer underneath it, because one layer won't be quite enough to do my machine work. Now, let's do a lace-shaped heart. First of all, I'm going to put the pins through the board. I've got a little board here that I stick the pins in. What I would like for you to notice, do you see how many more pins I have put around the curve than I did around the straight part? I did that for a reason, and I'll show you in just a minute. Now, let's review making a lace miter, which this particular heart at the top as well as the bottom has to have a lace miter. Pin at the top, pin at the bottom. Then I'm going to fold the lace back on itself like this. I don't fold it here. I bring it up and fold it back on itself. I'm going to remove the pin at the top, put it through 2 layers, and then I will have a perfect miter folded in, and I'm ready to start putting my pins around this side. Hang on just a minute here. Now, I've got something kind of funny to show you. Let me stick a couple of pins and start around this part of the curve. And by the way, I pull it taut, not tight, and be sure. See, when I've used my temporary spray adhesive, that keeps my netting a little bit flatter, which is very nice. Now, look here what I have here. There is a little bit of the lace sticking out of this miter. Now, this is very easy to fix. I want everybody to watch it real carefully, and this is a very sophisticated word I'm going to use. After I have shaped my whole heart on this side and this side, I'm going to do a very sophisticated principle of mush it. Now, you heard me right. I'm just going to mush it under just like that. It all goes away, and it's going to be cut away anyway later on. But even if it isn't cut away, it's perfectly all right just to mush that little tail underneath there, and then I have a pretty heart. Now, don't forget my famous Alabama principle of mush it. Now then, I have a little heart trouble over here, so I'm going to come down in the bottom of the lace. I'm going to pull the thread that's in the header of the lace, and isn't that just like magic? I have gone ahead and pulled the thread, and my lace just laid down perfectly. Now, before I come to do all this lace shaping, I will have already done my machine embroidery here, my machine embroidery here, and my machine embroidery here. Now, later on, I will also shape a lace insertion on the center, on that embroidery part in the center. Excuse me. You see, I have done that here. So I have stitched down the inside of my lace heart. I have stitched down both sides of my lace diamond in the middle. And you can see that I still have something to do on the outside here of this particular, because something has got to hold it down. I don't want it to flip and flop around. Now I might leave it unstitched, but in this case, I really don't want to leave it unstitched. So I'm going to come over here and I can do either a small zigzag, which is what I have chosen to do, or I could do just a straight stitch, but I think you go nearly to the outside. And some of you might say, now Martha, hang on just a minute. That's lace edging. It has a scallopy side. Well, that's not a problem. You just simply go in and you zigzag, or you do a tiny little straight stitch, and it will be perfectly all right either way you do it. Can you see there? I've just gotten a nice little zigzag around my lace heart. So pretty. And that makes it very, very easy to do. Now then, I have my final version here. Well, I don't stitch it in blue thread. Believe me, if I'm using ecru, I'm going to use ecru thread. That makes sense, doesn't it? And you can see I have stitched all the way around it. I've stitched around everything. And what I did on that wonderful quilt square over there, after all of this was stitched, I went in and did a tiny little pretty decorative stitch, which looks a little bit like lace, around on the inside. And there I have my Normandy lace. And now won't you come along with me to my attic? I have such a special dress for you today. As many of you know, I've traveled on several continents looking for these wonderful, wonderful antique clothes, which we call in the category of French sewing by machine, or heirloom sewing by machine, or heirloom sewing by hand, or French sewing by hand. This particular dress I did buy in France at the Paris flea market. Now, it has so many wonderful techniques on it. I think we'll just go ahead and get started. By the way, I do like to tell the stories about exactly how these particular occasions happen. When I got to the Paris flea market, Joe and I were in London preparing for a tour of people that were going to take over, where I'm calling it my flea market tour, because people do want to go with me to my haunts. And on Sunday morning, Joe said, Martha, let's just go on down to Paris. Let's catch the Euro train, the Eurostar, and go down to Paris. So we got on the train in London, and 3 hours later we were at Nord station in Paris, and we went to the Paris flea market, where I found this perfectly exquisite dress to bring to share with you. The collar is so wonderful, which leads me to believe it's probably anywhere from 1890 to 1910, where they had these beautiful high collars. It looks to be about a size, maybe about a size 6. The edging and the insertion, all with entredeaux in between. And then the bodice is so wonderful. It has just the beautiful French insertion that goes down where the top of the yoke would be. Now, some people look at these Swiss eyelets and say, was that done by hand? Well, there's a real easy way to tell, and I'm going to tell you how to do it now. If you want to know if eyelets were done by hand or by machine, you flip them to the back and you see where the threads are carried over. Now, these two flowers are the little sections I'm going to be looking at. And yes, indeed, the threads are carried exactly the same way. This petal, this petal, this petal. And I come to this one and I go this petal, this petal, this petal, and the threads are carried over at exactly the same place, and sometimes that is the only way that you can tell if it were made by hand or by machine. Now, this isn't really a round yoke little dress, as you can see right here. It is a square yoke dress, which is a much easier dress to make than a round yoke, and you can see the laces came all the way over to the edge. Now, the sleeves are absolutely a masterpiece. Do you see how the little rolled and whipped pin tucks are in here? And by the way, they're done by hand. I don't think they had double needles. As a matter of fact, I'm sure they didn't have double needles. So the pin tucks usually were stitched by hand. Look at the beautiful details on the bottom of this dress with the insertion. And now let's just go on down to the bottom, speaking of the bottom, and see the beautiful tucks. And by the way, these are pleats in this dress. You have your double needle, excuse me, not your double needle, your folded tucks. And then you have some pleats to pull in the fullness on this beautiful dress. Let me turn it over real quickly so you can have a look at the back. The back is exactly like the front. Isn't that gorgeous? Thank you so much for joining me in my sewing room, and I surely would like to invite you back next time.